afternoon and welcome. This is Pages Promotions Indie Reads TV. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Diana Catherine Plopa, and I am your host for today's show. This afternoon, whenever you're watching this, I have with me Mel Corrigan, and she is from Scribe Publishing Company. We're going to be talking a little bit about independent publishing and how she works with authors and how the process works, how maybe you as an author can join Mel in your quest to be an internationally known author. And so if you have any questions throughout the evening, feel free to give us a call, and we'll see if we can answer those questions for you. So welcome, Mel. There you are.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Hi. Okay, so forgive me. I'm still a little new at this technology thing, but I think we're going to have a good time doing it.
Good.
So tell me a little bit about Scribe Publishing Company.
Okay.
As an independent publisher, that's different from a traditional publisher. So maybe you want to start with that definition of the difference between independent publishing and traditional publishing for our viewers.
Yeah, the terminology that I always think of is you kind of have corporate publishers. So when we think of the big six or the big five, however many they are right now, Simon & Schuster, Random House, those kind of people, those are really corporate publishers, right? They're very big. They need to, in order to maintain the way their companies function, they need to have bestsellers. They need to bring in a lot of money because they have a huge infrastructure, a lot of people working for them, kind of like General Motors or Ford Motor Company. So independent publishers are basically publishers that still follow the traditional publishing model, which I can talk about in a moment, but they're smaller. They're privately owned, or maybe, and they can be small is relative. I've heard people use different terms throughout the industry.
Sure.
But you're not a $400 million company if you're a small publisher, right?
Right. And I think a big distinction, too, is do you own your own press? The big publishers in New York have these giant offset presses that they have to maintain and manage and, sell lots of copies of books in order to keep pressing new copies of additional books. So, and I think that's a big difference as well, is that I think smaller publishing houses tend to use distributors or independent print houses rather than owning their own presses.
That's true. Small publishers don't usually own their own presses. That's true. And so we follow a traditional printing model, which is basically that the author never pays for anything. We're very selective with what we're publishing. We want to have a partnership with the author, make it work for both parties. And we use a distributor, actually, we have some worldwide distribution. Of course, that's kind of limited, but it is a national distributor. IPG is they're a well-known distributor in this country, and that's who we use. And that's royalty-based. So all of our authors earn royalties on their sales. So that's a traditional publishing model, but we're a small press. We're not a huge corporate press. And then there are other types of publishers as well, like a hybrid publisher is a publisher who they probably have house standards for what they want to publish, but it is author subsidized. And the degree to their degree of involvement can vary from publisher to publisher. It's just kind of open-ended. And then, of course, there's self-publishing. So
as a publishing house, what are you looking for in new manuscripts? Do you need an agent to come to you? Do you accept unsolicited manuscripts? Do you only have calls for manuscripts at a particular time for a particular genre or style? Give us a little idea about what you're looking for and how authors out there might be able to connect with you to get them to look at your manuscript.
Okay. So let me start off by saying that Scribe Publishing Company was founded in 2011 by Jennifer Baum. She started a consulting business and then decided to open a publishing house. She wanted to bring the publishing industry here to Michigan, where it's where we don't really have a big publishing industry.
Right.
And she wanted to bring new voices to the market. Of course, voices that might not be able to make it through the normal channels that the bigger publishing houses can offer. So that's how that got started. And presently, we have published 12 titles so far, some fiction, some nonfiction. Presently, we are open to submissions. we take unagented submissions, so you don't have to have an agent to submit your work with us. Presently, we're closed to fiction, although we're getting ready to launch some new imprints. So in the near term, we will be open to fiction again. You can keep checking scribepublishing.com for information about that. But if you're a nonfiction publisher, or if you're a nonfiction author and you're interested in publishing with us, you can go to scribe-publishing.com/submit, and there you can find our submission guidelines.
Excellent. Okay. And we've got that website scrolling on the screen periodically throughout the show so that people can grab a pen and write it down. So I guess the next question for me would be, you said you're not currently accepting submissions for fiction. Are there other restrictions about what you'll publish and what you won't publish? Or right now, is it just you're not doing fiction and you're open to nonfiction? Are you doing poetry? Are you doing picture books?
Right.
What other kinds of genres maybe you're not open to right now, but in the future you might be open to accepting?
Right now, in terms of nonfiction, we publish books like travel books, cookbooks. We're interested in voices, so if you have, think of something like memoir.
Okay.
The whole list is on the website. It's
Sure.
specifically articulated, so for anybody who is an author, they can clearly see what we're looking for and what we're not. In terms of where we're going in the future with fiction, I can say that our fiction author at present is young adult, and so we do have an interest in young adult fiction. But beyond that, I can't really say. To be honest, I don't really even know the scope yet of our new imprints. So it's very much in the making right now.
Sure.
So
Well, your publishing house is, I would say, sort of in its infancy, with so few titles out. But from what I've seen, you're being very selective and very careful about publishing extremely good quality work and creating strong relationships with your authors. Can you tell us a little bit about how you might help authors to maybe go on to the next book, or how do you assist them with marketing if you offer those kinds of services, and any other ancillary services that might be above and beyond just edit, print, cover design?
So let me start by saying that what we look for in authors in general, assuming that their genre matches up in their manuscript, is what we want. We want authors who know who their audience is and how to communicate with their audience, and who want to build a partnership with us long lasting. Of course, we would like to publish more than one book with each of our authors, right? That's good for everybody.
Sure. Yeah,
Everybody
and your
wants
author
that
would love that too.
Of course.
Yeah.
So we are back to the traditional publishing model. We do everything. So Jennifer Baum she's responsible for acquisitions and editorial.
Okay.
So once we decide to bring a book on, we do some positioning to see how we're going to present it to the world and present it to the market. We do all the editorial in-house. We take care of all the design. Our authors are involved in that process to the extent that they can be. We certainly want them to be happy with what we're doing.
But you are. Let me see if I can just clarify this point, because I know a lot of authors are really concerned about the level of control that they lose over their work when they use a large publishing house. How much control do you offer the independent author if they come to you to publish? What are they allowed to do or not allowed to do, I guess, would be the question.
Well, within the context of a traditional publisher, the publisher is responsible for everything fundamentally. We
Right.
do everything from, the whole way through marketing and publicity.
As my grandmother said, soup to nuts.
It's soup to nuts, exactly.
Right.
That's a good analogy. But it depends on the author. Some of our authors are very interested in the cover design, so we might work very closely with them in that regard. Or, the way the book is laid out. We're never going to shut the author out completely and say, here's how it's going. You'll see what your cover looks like when it's published. I mean, that's not how we work. We want that partnership with authors. But no author has full license to just do whatever they want. I mean, number one, we're the one physically doing it. It's their work, for sure. But they don't touch any of the production. They're not uploading files anywhere.
Right. And it is really, as a traditional small house, it's your investment on the line as well.
Yes.
So you want to make sure it's good quality work before it goes out the door.
Absolutely. And I guess when I think of authors pursuing publishers in general, so whether you want to, try to get a huge book deal with an agent and a publisher. You want any type of small press, whatever. There's a lot of flavors of small press throughout the traditional model.
Yep.
And then you have hybrid and vanity and all these other options as well. But I think every author should, number one, research the company. Like, know what the company is, know what they offer, know what they don't offer. Do they have distribution like we do, for example, with IPG or another big distributor? Is it only print-on-demand distribution? Will it all be print-on-demand, or will you do print runs? At Scribe Publishing, we do print runs. And we do use print-on-demand for backlists sometimes in special cases.
Sure.
Is it ebook only? I mean, some publishing houses only do ebooks, for example.
Yeah, I've heard of that that strange thing out there that they only do ebooks, and I've thought to myself that's kind of narrowing the scope of opportunity for the author. I mean, yes, we love our ebooks and we love to travel and have books on demand, but those print books are still just as widely in demand. So it's always been a conundrum to me why a publishing house would only choose to do ebook. Or for that matter, audiobook, because I see all three of them as so intertwined together. Can you talk a little bit about what an author should look for when they are auditioning a publishing house? Are there any red flags or pitfalls, or, hey, this is a bad idea. If you see this in your contract, don't do that. Anything like that you might be able to offer to authors that are doing this for the first time?
Sure. A few, we'll keep it kind of simple. The first thing is you should know what type of publishing house it is. Again, if it's a hybrid publisher, for example, you're going to have to foot the bill for a lot of the publishing. And again, the percentage will vary, but it is what it is. For a traditional publisher, you would never pay a dime for anything. Now, if we're doing some joint marketing, I mean, maybe you pay to run your website, or there might be some small costs on the marketing side, but you would never pay us to do your marketing. We pay for the marketing on our end, for example. The copyright should always belong to the author. So you wouldn't necessarily know that from looking at their website, but if you get to the point where you're looking at contracts, you definitely want to make sure that you own the copyright. And then also, what are the terms of payment? What is the royalty being paid? Well, let me back up and say, do they pay in advance or don't they? A lot of small press do pay advances, and some of them don't. Presently, we don't formally pay advances, although I don't know that we're close to that idea fundamentally, but we just haven't done that so far.
It is an economic question, after
It's an
all.
economic question. We're not sitting on $300 million.
Who of us is?
Right. It'd be great if we could do that. But but beyond advances, what are the terms? What are the royalty terms, and at what frequency are they paid? It's important to know that in the publishing industry, especially when you're doing a more traditional model, your books have to be printed, let's say, 6 months ahead of the release date, because they have to get to the warehouse and they have to start being shipped out to the bookstore. There's this whole process. And then the net terms for bookstores is the net terms with the distributor is 180 days.
Wow.
So
that's a really long time.
9 months before you get any money, 9 to 12 months before you get any money. So, and the payment terms should basically reflect that. There's usually a delay, right? So, sales earned between this 6-month period will be paid out like in the next year, So at our publishing company, we pay royalties twice per year.
Okay.
That's common. It's an industry norm. And you should know, is it percent of list? Is your royalty based on percent of list? Is it based on net cash receipts? You should just know what these things are. And then you can assess for you whether you like it or not.
And I should also say that it's super important, at least from the perspective of an author, it's super important for you to have that contract, for you to have all of those things in writing so that you are well protected and that you understand the expectations that the publishing house places on you as an author, and so that you can have some expectation of what the publishing house is going to do for you.
Absolutely.
If you don't have those things outlined in writing, that could be a tenuous thing for everybody involved.
Absolutely. And I know it sounds like it's overkill, but hiring a literary lawyer to take a look at your contract can be a very good investment. I mean, your book could go on to sell 20,000, 50,000, 2 million copies. You don't know. And if that contract isn't written well, you're stuck with it
Exactly.
if you sign it. So.
Yeah. For those of you who might be just tuning in, we are speaking with Mel Corrigan from Scribe Publishing Company. We're talking a little bit about independent publishing and how authors can be helped with working with a smaller publishing house rather than one of the big 6, 5, how many there are left now. It's not long ago there were some 20 out there. And,
they keep buying each other.
Yeah, it's remarkable. I was speaking with another author friend, and we were talking about the merger with Random House and Penguin. And I guess it's Penguin bought Random House, so officially they're Penguin Random, but I like to say Random Penguin because it just sounds better. It just sounds like more fun that way. I don't know if Random Penguin would appreciate it, but, So what's the... I guess my question would be this. As authors, we're all searching for the best possible outcome.
Yes.
We want to keep control of our creative work, and we want a great publishing deal. What's like the golden ticket of independent publishing? How would you see that for an author? Say that the top 3 best case ticket items that you can get from an independent house. What would those be where you kind of get the idea where, yes, this is a good choice? Look deeper into that company.
Okay. I think, number one, the credibility of the company. Do they have national distribution? Are they affiliated? Have their books won awards? I mean, you can spend, I think, the first thing I would say before we get to those 3 things is, if you want to try to have a partnership with a publishing company, for example, they're going to invest a lot of time in you. So the least you can do is spend 20 minutes on their website and figure out some of these basic, answer some of these basic questions. Like, are they credible? What books have they published? How are they selling? Where are they? You can go look around and try to, look at some of their authors. You can even go knock on their author's door and say, hey, you published with so-and-so. What do you think, for example?
Virtually knock on their door. Send them an email.
Virtually. No stalking, please. But yeah, so then I think once you... once you know that I think you really need to know if they're credible. So you establish their credibility. And then, wait, sorry, your question was the top few things that they know they're getting a good deal.
Yeah.
So, a recent Nielsen book scan survey showed that more than 50% of readers still choose their books based on cover or picking it up and looking at it.
Yeah, I do.
Which means you want to be in a bookstore, which means POD has some limitations. It's not wrong to do print on demand. It's a great way to start. But if you really want to get your book out there and you want it to be more successful, you kind of need to get on bookstore shelves. And national distribution helps with that.
Right. And the other thing, I don't want us to dissuade those POD people out there.
Absolutely not.
If you want to do the legwork and go knock on the doors of bookshops, you might be able to get on their shelves. It is easier with a distributor.
Yeah.
Definitely easier, but it is still possible. So
absolutely.
Those POD people, I have friends who are POD people, and they've got their books on shelves, but it's not an easy road to climb.
Right.
So with that cautionary tale, it is easier to go with a print house or a publishing house like you so that they get that distribution advantage.
So that national distribution, I think, is a huge benefit. If you're talking about the golden eggs of the small publisher, national distribution is one of them. I think when you're looking at royalty ranges, you should be looking at something around 8 to 10% of list. That's the type of royalty you should expect. Now, if you're going with a hybrid publisher and you're subsidizing the cost of publishing, you should expect higher than that. Hybrid publishers should pay much higher royalties than that because you're paying for most of the work in those cases.
Right.
So that's something to know. But back to then more traditional publishing, I guess the third thing is, again, it should be a partnership on both sides. A partnership literally means for both people. It should benefit both people. You should make sure that you enjoy the interaction with the people that you're working with, feel that you're respected. Again, you might not have 100% license to have everything the exact way that you want it.
Right.
But your questions and your interests should be addressed respectfully. And there should be good reasons if, let's just say, an author is very passionate about a particular cover design. If we don't want to go with that, I think we owe it to the author to talk about that and explain why and say, well, look, other books in your genre look a lot more like this, and we want it to be able to sell, so we need to make it competitive. Right, so there needs to be some rationality on both sides.
Having some competitiveness in the marketplace is important. We understand an author may have a tremendous idea for a book cover, but if it's not competitive in the marketplace, it might work to their benefit to have something new and different and unusual. But it could also maybe sometimes work to their detriment as well. And that's where having a company like yours in their back pocket is going to help them, because you guys have done all the market research.
Yes.
You know the trends. You know what readers are looking for.
Yes.
So you're really an advocate for these readers.
Exactly. And that's another thing, too. What you should find in small publishing is that they get somewhat niche-y. Maybe not, it doesn't mean they have to publish one thing. I mean, some publishers do only publish YA or motorsports books or whatever it is. But if you publish everything, I don't think you can do everything well. You know what I mean? So
it's very difficult to do everything well.
Yes, there needs to be some amount of focus there. You should be able to see, like, oh, they've published 6 YA novels and 20 cookbooks, or whatever it is.
Sure.
That gives you an indication that they've done that marketing research, that they understand how to reach those markets, and that's an advantage for you.
Exactly. So your company, again, is Scribe Publishing, and you're right here based in Michigan.
Yes.
We've got your website is going to crawl across the screen here in just one second. Are there any specific... I know that you have all of this really important detail stuff on your website about how you want things submitted. There's every publishing house, every contest you ever enter, they all have submission guidelines. And we just have about 5 minutes left. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of following those submission guidelines?
Yes.
And can you just touch a little bit on the detriment of not doing it?
Yes. Okay. Yes, and with that, I'm going to make just a few other quick tips, too.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if you want somebody to take the time to read your manuscript, you should show that you've taken the time to do your homework and know what the person wants, right?
Absolutely.
It's just a respect,
Sure.
It's a mutual respect kind of relationship. So if someone says they're closed to unsolicited submissions, which means they want agented submissions only, just don't waste your time. Just go find a place that's open to unagented submissions. I'm going to stop saying that word.
Yeah.
And so and also you should have a really tight query letter. There are a lot of resources out there for how to write a query, and they should be pretty short and succinct, and they're a little bit formulaic. And I've heard a lot of authors kind of maybe just kind of moan a little bit about, but why does it have to be like that? I just want to be able to put my best foot forward. And you can do that. With small publishers, you might be able to do that. You just might be able to write a very compelling pitch in a natural, organic way, and that might be good enough. But if you're pitching agents or publishers that have a lot, let's say you get 1,000 submissions a month.
Right.
If your query doesn't tell them what they need to know, it's just going to fall through the cracks.
It's going to go in the circular file pretty darn quickly if you don't follow what they're looking for, if they can't quickly identify that you fit what they're looking for.
Exactly. And to that point, one more comment before I get to the submission. Specifically, you have to know your genre. Now, there might be some options for your genre. For example, we all have...
Every genre has several subgenres.
Many subgenres,
but
right.
you at least need to know the overall genre.
You do. And I know it can be hard because we're so close to the story and we think that there's, it has all this nuance and it's very unique. And it's true, every story is unique, but it's got to go on a bookshelf. And when you're pitching your story to a publisher, they need to know what it is. Again, do I publish fly fishing books? No, I don't,
Exactly. I've talked to many authors and they say, I don't know how to genre my book. And I've often suggested they walk through Barnes & Noble.
Yes.
And imagine their book being on the shelf. What's the first intuitive place they would look for their own book?
Yes.
What shelf would you go to? That's probably your genre.
That's great advice. And then when it comes to the submission guidelines, again, at least I don't think anybody's out there making submission guidelines just to get rid of people. It's just we're trying to tell you what we want. We're trying to tell you exactly what we want so that if you write the material that we want, you can tell it tell us that and give it to us, and then we can say, great, this is what we want, and we can sit down and read it.
You can hire them faster.
Yes, this helps everybody. So it's not jumping through hoops. It's not, I guess it's a weed out in the sense that if we're not publishing children's books, we don't want children's books.
Right.
But it's not a weed out of we don't want to deal with you. We want you. We are not a publishing company without you. So we want your book. So yes, just take the time to read those submission guidelines explicitly, follow them to a T. Sometimes they're going to ask, it's particularly with nonfiction, they're going to be asked for a proposal. Book proposals come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. You can find books on them. There are online resources for how to write them. You can find templates for them.
Yep.
But take the time to do that, because I've written book proposals and it teaches you a lot about your book. Even if you end up, maybe you don't even submit to that publisher after all, but it's going to tell you a lot. You're going to learn a lot through that process.
Absolutely. It's almost... There we go. It's almost like sending yourself through a miniature MFA to learn about submissions.
Yes.
The more research you do, the more you find out what the details are about how to submit, the greater, I think, your chances are of landing a deal with a publishing house, whether they be big or small.
I think you're right.
Same thing with agents. They're very particular. And that's the other thing I've noticed, and I looked at your website, and I was very happy to see this on your website as well, is that there are no hidden things in your submission guidelines. There's no breadcrumbs you have to follow. There are no hidden treasures that you have to, solve this mystery to figure out exactly what your company is looking for. You're pretty straightforward with what your company is looking for.
Yes, absolutely. And that's probably another signature of a credible publishing company. They know what they're looking for, and they can explain what they're looking for. And again, that helps you. You can say, "Oh, that's not for me. I don't fit there." Go find the ones where you do fit, because there are thousands of small publishers out there.
Right. Yeah. Just because my key doesn't fit your lock doesn't mean that it's a failure.
Absolutely.
It simply means it's not a good fit, and it's time to go find a different lock.
Absolutely.
Right. So, one last thing. We've got about a minute left. You could give one really strong piece of advice for an independent author on any topic. Mm-hmm. What would you tell them?
I would say that the book that you've written is your art, right? You created this in your brain. You've mined it from wherever it came from. And I think the best thing you can do to bring justice to that work is to spend a lot of time editing it. So get feedback from beta readers, pay an editor, maybe more than one editor, find some friends who are English majors or something.
Absolutely.
Do several rounds of revisions yourself. Don't sell your work short by saying, I wrote the book, I'm done. Because I know that's an amazing, momentous feeling, but there's still a lot of work to do. If Stephen King has to revise his drafts over and over,
so do
we
the
all
rest
do
of us.
as
Right.
well.
Thank you so much, Mel. I really appreciate you coming in today and sharing all your wisdom with us. It's been great to have you in the studio.
Thank you.
I again hope you get tons and tons of submissions from this interview, and people call you and find out more about who you are and what you do.
Thank you.
Thanks again for coming, and have an awesome evening.
Thanks, you too. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.